Two extraordinary women, born 3 years apart. One, a commoner, destined against all odds to become queen. The other was, for 7 years, second in line to the throne. It's the ultimate tale of the unstoppable force meeting the immovable object, the coming together of a surprise outsider and the supreme insider. From accusations of a bitter love quadrangle to rumours of a decades-old destructive rift, this is the fascinating story of the parallel and intersecting lives of Queen Camilla and her alleged once-upon-a-time love rival and now sister-in-law, Princess Anne. Here, I'll separate fact from fiction, gossip from gospel, as we reveal the truth about the depth of feeling between the unlikely queen and the princess who was once a heartbeat from the throne, but who must now bend the knee to her brother's second wife. The first image I want to look at closely is this, and what an extraordinary image it is. Taken sometime before Christmas 1954, it shows a 4-year-old Anne and the 6-year-old future king, clearly sharing a moment of pure joy and affection. In fact, the moment was so memorable that the photographer, Marcus Adams, marked this print with a circle and notes in the top right that this portion of the photograph might serve as a stunning Christmas card, presumably exclusively for members of the extended royal family only. I think what's clear is the unique bond between the siblings, that in later years would grow into a deep affection and natural sense of protectiveness over one another. Coincidentally, it was the same photographer, Marcus Adams, who took the portrait of then Princess Elizabeth in 1934 that was used as the basis of her appearance on the Canadian $20 bill in 1935, the first time the future monarch would appear on any banknote. The next image I want to look at closely is actually from a Paramount newsreel from 1955. These short films were shown in cinemas across the world and would have delighted audiences across the Commonwealth and beyond with such an intimate, unprecedented glimpse inside the royal family, just 3 years after Queen Elizabeth's ascension to the throne. I was particularly drawn to this moment when Princess Anne instinctively dashes ahead of her older brother Charles to get closer to the ponies at Balmoral on the other side of the fence. Indeed, this fearlessness and her love of everything equine would prove to be enduring features across Anne's adult life. It's remarkable to think that just 16 years after this footage was taken, this little girl would be the equestrian champion of all Europe. And just look at this, January 1960, 5 years on from the previous newsreel. What a remarkably arresting image it is. A perfect mix of the candid and formal. A picture that very much exemplifies the realities of everyday life for the royal family. On the one hand, it is an obviously playful moment, as the 9-year-old Princess Anne is toasted by her father, the Duke of Edinburgh, and 11-year-old Charles. On the other hand, we have the conspicuous formality of the bridesmaid's dress for the wedding of Pamela Mountbatten, Queen Elizabeth's third cousin and lady-in-waiting. And this illustrates, I believe, a fundamental difference between the upbringing of Princess Anne and Queen Camilla. For Princess Anne, there was always this certainty that her life would be dedicated to the service of the realm, that even at a family occasion, there were special expectations on her as a royal. She has always understood the meaning of the words duty and sacrifice. In contrast to this, we have Queen Camilla's childhood. This image, taken in 1952, shows a 4-year-old Camilla Shand and her sister Annabel, both bridesmaids at a society wedding in Mayfair, London. Like many of the families present that day, the Shands are rich and well connected, but without any expectation of having to shoulder the future burdens of royal responsibility. It should perhaps be noted that before he was a successful businessman, Camilla's father, Bruce Shand, was an officer in the Royal Lancers who won the Military Cross for gallantry during the withdrawal to Dunkirk in 1940. So while life was comfortable for the Shand family after the war, it was the kind of comfort that was truly earned. Biographer Giles Brandreth has said, Camilla is often described as having had an Enid Blyton sort of childhood. In fact, it was much grander than that. Enid Blyton's children were essentially middle class, while the Shands, without question, belonged to the upper class. The Shands had position and they had help. Help in the house, help in the garden, help with children. They were gentry. It's been said that being a member of the British gentry is a bit like being a beloved house cat. You are very important and have little to do. This is in stark contrast to being a member of the British royal family, who are also very important, but have much to do. I think this difference is uniquely exemplified by this next image, showing Camilla Shand in 1963, age 16, looking like she doesn't have a care in the world as she attends the Eton versus Harrow cricket match at Lord's in London. Coincidentally, Camilla was supporting Eton, the school that Prince William would attend 32 years later. In terms of her own education, Camilla had left Queensgate School in South Kensington, London, where she had studied as a boarder with a single O-level, opting to go to a finishing school in Switzerland rather than complete her A-levels. For our American viewers, that would be the equivalent of leaving high school in the 10th grade. And why not? Camilla would have a comfortable life, with or without finishing her formal education. In 1965, shortly after Camilla's return from finishing school, her parents, Major Bruce and Rosalind Shand, hosted a coming-out party for the 17-year-old Camilla in Knightsbridge, London, essentially declaring that their daughter was now eligible for marriage. Camilla wasn't expected to forge a suitable career. Essentially, the highest demand on someone of Camilla's station at that time was simply to find a suitable husband. Here we see Camilla's mother, Rosalind, at the coming-out party, next to her daughter. While it's impossible to know what they were thinking in this seemingly awkward-looking moment, what can be said with certainty is neither were imagining that one day the young woman on the right of this picture would become the Queen of England. Not that Camilla was in any kind of a rush. As a girlfriend of hers in the early 70s noted, 9 to 5 wasn't important. Evenings, weekends, horses, hunting, people, parties, that's what counted for Camilla. I mean, look at this next image from 1966, showing a rather radiant Camilla as she attends the first night of previews of the musical Funny Girl, starring Barbra Streisand. This is just a year after her coming out party, and all the awkwardness is gone. Like Fanny Bryce in the musical Funny Girl, Camilla clearly exudes the confidence of a young woman, demanding to be in control of her own destiny. Tickets to the show would have been absolute gold dust, and there she is, looking as if she feels completely at ease within the ranks of high society, clearly possessing a confidence that would prove invaluable in the coming years. In stark contrast to Camilla's insouciant late 60s lifestyle, by 1971, Princess Anne was already on royal duty, seen here in her role as president of the Save the Children Fund in Kenya in April 1971. Here she is, sitting amidst a crowd of orphans during a football match at a boys' centre in Nairobi. Aged just 21, Princess Anne has already fully immersed herself in the duties that will eventually see her defined as the hardest working royal in the firm. It's clear from her expression that she understands the serious and often sensitive nature of her royal duties, despite only recently taking on such responsibilities. Indeed, 1971 would turn out to be a blockbuster year for Princess Anne. Apart from her official overseas trips to Kenya and a state visit to Turkey, Princess Anne also attended the Society of Film and Television Awards, which later became BAFTA. And as we can see from this image, the young princess had already begun making sartorial headlines with this stunning emerald dress and a rather fashion-forward black choker. The point here, I think, is that this is something the Queen would never have worn. It's as if Anne is laying down a marker. Yes, I'm going to be taking on all the roles and responsibilities I've been born into, but I'm going to be doing it my way, in my own style and tone. Something I believe that wouldn't have been lost on the great iconoclast Alfred Hitchcock, to whom Princess Anne presented the Fellowship Award that very same evening. However, all of this was eclipsed in September of '71, when Princess Anne became the individual European 3-day champion on doublet, a gelding gifted to her by the Queen Mother. And you can see the skill and bravery this required from this incredible image of Anne and doublet soaring through the air during the steeplechase portion of the competition. The utter fearlessness of Anne and her steed are on full display for the thousands of spectators who turned out to see her compete. It should be remembered that along with sailing, Equestrian events are some of the only sports where men and women compete directly against one another outside of mixed double sports such as tennis. Anne's European triumph of 1971 was against not only the best women of her day, but also the finest men, an incredible achievement for the ages. Indeed, 41 years later, at the 2012 Olympics in London, Princess Anne had the honour of presenting her own daughter, Zara Phillips, with a silver medal as a member of the Great Britain eventing team, something that would have brought on enormous sense of pride to both Anne and Zara's grandmother, the Queen. To understand that, you'd have to look no further than this wonderful colour footage, where we see Princess Anne receiving the European Championship trophy from her mother, the Queen, back in 1971. Undoubtedly a supremely proud moment for mother and daughter alike. When we stop the footage here, we can even see the Queen leaning forward to touch the trophy, a clearly impulsive gesture from a hugely experienced rider who admired the very best competitors in the world, one of whom was now her own daughter, Anne. Because of her European triumph, and in another first for the British royal family, Princess Anne also wins the BBC Sports Personality in 1971. It should be remembered that this prize is voted for by the public, a marker of the esteem that Anne has long been held in by the British people. However, beyond the joy of these triumphs, there was already, allegedly, a Camilla-shaped storm cloud brewing. As in the run-up to Anne's Annus Mirabilis, the young Princess Anne had had a dalliance with a dashing young cavalry officer, a certain Andrew Parker Bowles, who along with his future wife Camilla, was part of the in-crowd that regularly mixed with members of the royal family. In this image, we can see Anne smiling at the rather rakish-looking APB, as his friends called him. He looks back at her with a rather carefree expression for someone standing in the company of the woman who, at that time, was fourth in the line of succession. Although the exact details can only be speculated upon, it appears APB and on-again, off-again girlfriend Camilla Shand were on a break when Princess Anne stepped out with Andrew. However, as viewers of the TV show Friends will be well aware, being on a break can be contentious territory. It's also been suggested that Camilla began an affair with Prince Charles as quote-unquote revenge on Anne for her affair with APB, creating the most unlikely love quadrangle imaginable, involving the heir to the throne, his sister, APB, and Camilla Shand. Indeed, many who insist Anne and Camilla have bad blood to this day and paint them as erstwhile love rivals point to this period as the beginning of the feud. However, it should be noted that APB was never a viable husband for Princess Anne, being not only 11 years older than the princess, but also a Roman Catholic, a fact which, at the time, would have legally forced the Queen to withhold her consent to the marriage because of the Act of Settlement of 1701. It's also worth noting that Princess Anne had at this time what might politely be referred to as a full dance card, and didn't seem to be seriously interested in any of her early suitors, including APB, who, as we can see from this picture from 2015, remain fast friends. In fact, you might be tempted to say that after 44 years, they are still completely in step, certainly when it comes to their love and appreciation for all things Ascot. However, idle speculation about Princess Anne's love life would come to an abrupt end in 1973, when Anne announced her engagement to an officer in the 1st Queen's Dragoon Guards, Mark Phillips. At the time, the talk of the town was that a clearly headstrong Anne had chosen as her husband not a royal but a commoner. And while this decision never threatened to rise to the scandalous levels of Edward VIII and Wallis Simpson, it nonetheless raised several bushy royal eyebrows. What's more, Captain Phillips was rather dismissively referred to in certain circles as a poor man's APB, not as handsome, not as devilish, not as bright. However, many people fail to see the obvious and clear suitability of Mr. Phillips to a union with Anne. As biographer Brian Hoey noted, Anne has a mercurial temperament. Some days she is on a high, on others she can be very low-spirited. Mark was able to ride her occasional bad temper by simply laughing it off. By doing so, he was able to break the spell of her moods. a wonderful quality to possess as her life partner. Indeed, noting their shared passion for horses, the Queen was believed to have said of the engagement, "I shouldn't wonder if their children are four-legged." While Anne and Mark prepared for their November nuptials, another wedding was taking place the same year. On July the 4th, 1973, at the Guards Chapel in Wellington Barracks, London, Princess Anne's ex, Captain Andrew Parker Bowles, married Camilla Shand in front of 800 guests in a Catholic service. The Queen Mother was in attendance. She was friends of APB's parents, along with Princess Anne, in yet another sign of the perhaps overblown claims of a historic rift between the two women. While the Parker Bowles-Shand wedding was labelled the most talked about social ceremony of that infamously hot British summer, another, less conspicuous union had been burning feverishly barely months before. Seen here together the previous summer at a polo ground, Charles had allegedly fallen so in love with Camilla Shand that it said he was on the brink of proposing to her on his 24th birthday, on the 14th of November 1972. Coincidentally, the same date Anne would marry Mark exactly 1 year later. The problem for Charles and Camilla at this time was, frankly, Charles. Not only was he notoriously indecisive in his youth, hence failing to propose at all, he was also still on active service and was frequently overseas on naval duty. In part because of his indecisiveness, a mere 8 months after he wanted to propose to his true love, Camilla, she was walking down the aisle with Andrew Parker Bowles. In life and in love, royal or commoner, one rule still applies. If you snooze, you lose. Indeed, while Charles dithered, Anne had charged forward, inadvertently introducing the nation to the next evolution in royal engagements, the well-intentioned yet excruciating TV interview.
Do you think you'll make a good housewife? I mean, can you cook, for example?
Well, it's hardly up to me to say either.
I mean, how much more awkward, more cringeworthy could this be? Looking back, it feels like a grim prelude to when, infamously, 9 years later, in February 1981, Charles and Diana were asked during their own engagement interview if they were in love. Diana said, "Of course," to which Charles promptly retorted, "Whatever in love means." I suppose we should remember that if a person is taught all their life to maintain a stiff upper lip, to never make any public utterance about their true innermost feelings, a candid interview about affairs of the heart is always going to feel inauthentic to the casual viewer, even if it is based on a genuine emotion. Nonetheless, in November 1973, Princess Anne married the commoner Captain Mark Phillips at Westminster Abbey. The ceremony was televised around the world and was watched by an estimated 500 million viewers. Despite Anne attending Camilla's wedding, Camilla did not attend Anne's, adding additional smoke to the fire of latter-day accusations of a bitter rift. However, 126 days later, Anne and Captain Phillips would make global headlines again, albeit for a far more sinister reason. On the 20th of March 1974, while returning from a charity event and within sight of Buckingham Palace, their car was forced to a sudden stop by a vehicle driven by an unemployed labourer, Ian Bull, who intended to kidnap and then ransom Princess Anne for £2 million. Bull had 2 revolvers in his possession, and in the minutes that ensued, fired 6 shots, injuring the princess's private bodyguard, Inspector James Beaton, her chauffeur Alex Callender, a passing police officer, Michael Hills, who rushed to the scene, as well as a passing journalist, John McConnell. In a moment that has gone down in royal legend, when the gunman grabbed Anne's arm and demanded she get out of the car, she promptly replied, "Not bloody likely." Mercifully, the would-be kidnapper didn't have an ounce of Anne's grit or composure. Shortly afterwards, he fled the scene and was captured within sight of the appalling kidnap attempt. Ian Bull was subsequently sent to a psychiatric hospital by an Old Bailey judge. Now, take a look at this image. Believe it or not, this is 2 days after the shootings. And here we see Anne and Captain Phillips in his home village of Great Somerford, Wiltshire, attending a marquee tea during their first public appearance since the incident. Anne is overheard saying to a guest at the party, It would not have been much good sort of sitting and brooding about it. I mean, what can you say? 48 hours earlier, there were literally bullets blazing. If Anne wasn't a member of the royal family, there would really be only one word to describe her: badass. Moving on, by the mid-1970s, when both these images were taken, Princess Anne and Camilla were on completely different trajectories. And don't these images of a night on the town tell a story of their own when set side by side? Here we see Princess Anne in full colour, looking relaxed and confident with her husband Captain Phillips. In the other, we see Charles and the now married Camilla Parker Bowles. However, allegedly, Charles and Camilla had renewed their liaison as early as 1973, mere months after Camilla's wedding. So here we have the princess, stepping into the life she had imagined from childhood, proudly taking her place on the world stage, in the full glare of publicity, with all the scrutiny that brings. And here's Camilla, forced to play a role, forced to keep a monumental secret, to hide her love under a bushel, to know her great love cannot marry her, but at the same time must marry, because royal succession comes before everything, even true love. Unlike Anne, who had been serving the realm since she was a child, this was Camilla's first real taste of the burdens of the British royal bloodline. And indeed, take a look at this remarkable picture, showing Diana Spencer, as she was known at that time, and Camilla Parker Bowles on Friday, October the 24th, 1980. They're both attending Ludlow races, where Prince Charles was competing on his own horse, Alibar, in an amateur rider's handicap chase. And speaking of competition, here we have the two women who would war bitterly over the affections of the heir to the British throne for the next 6 years, by which time Charles and Diana would have wed in 1981, had 2 sons, and then quietly separated by 1986, after which time they led largely independent lives. Then again, allegedly, this was not the first time Camilla had gone to bat against a royal love rival and hit her opponent for 6. However, Diana's tragic death in August 1997 shook the royal family to its foundation and opened up conversations about the upbringing of her bereaved, beloved boys, William and Harry, then just 15 and 13 years old respectively. In this footage, taken on the 6th of September 1997, just outside Buckingham Palace, we can stop it here to witness Princess Anne, her head bowed deeply and respectfully before Diana's funeral cortege, showing in her actions the deep solemnity of her feelings in the moment. Foremost in her thoughts, no doubt, were young William and Harry, and what, as their aunt, she might be able to do for them in the years to come. At this time, it was inconceivable that Camilla would ever step into a maternal role in the absence of Diana. But in the moment, the boys needed someone, and clearly Anne committed to doing whatever she could. Indeed, from this time forward, Anne was seen more and more around the boys than ever before. For example, here we see her on point in 2003, with William welcoming the victorious English Rugby World Cup winning side to Buckingham Palace. Notice how naturally Anne takes to these situations, compared with the rather awkward, stiff-looking William. No doubt he would have felt even more out of place were it not for Anne's natural poise and grace in these kind of situations. And no wonder. She'd been a working royal for well over a decade before the princes were born. On the same theme of looking after the boys, we have this wonderful footage from 2008, where we see Prince Harry receiving his first Army Campaign Medal for military service in Afghanistan. What an incredibly proud moment for the princess and the prince, who were, above all else, a loving aunt and a devoted nephew, sharing in the recognition of Harry's brave and selfless achievements in service of Queen and country. It would be an understatement to say in the early post-Diana years that Camilla was persona non grata. Press hit pieces were the order of the day. During this period, it would have been impossible for Princess Anne to imagine Camilla ever becoming queen. Indeed, as Giles Brandreth notes in Charles and Camilla, the story of Charles and Camilla has been beyond belief. The woman who reportedly once cowered in a supermarket car park while strangers threw bread rolls at her, now stands on the balcony at Buckingham Palace, waving at the crowds below. But as we know, become queen she did, instituting a change to Camilla and Anne's relationship that could not have been imagined on the polo grounds of Windsor when they were supposed love rivals 54 years before King Charles's coronation. Next, let's take a look at this. I sometimes think this image tells the story certain people want to imagine, rather than a story that is necessarily true. The photograph was taken in 2022, a year before Charles's coronation, at a royal garden party in Buckingham Palace. The story it tells is of a princess, devoted to and protective of her older brother, and how her once-upon-a-time love rival not only stole her boyfriend in 1973, but also her brother in 2005, that the two women closest to the king are divided through a lifetime of betrayals, secrets, and unlikely resurrections, all the while locked in a battle for his attention and favour. However, I believe the truth of the matter is far less scandalous than people might wish to imagine. Essentially, the gutter narrative is that we have these two strong, independent, confident, tenacious women who move in the same circles, who must surely, therefore, by some obscure law of nature, be at war. This is of course preposterous. It assumes they are competing for the same thing. They are not, and that they must be intimidated by the relative position of the other. Again, they are not. While doubtless Princess Anne and Queen Camilla have had their ups and downs, I don't think there's any doubt they, at the very least, have a professional admiration for one another as working royals. After all, game recognises game. They also have a shared love of fine horses and fine horsemen, which a young Prince Charles most certainly was in his day, as was Andrew Parker Bowles. And yes, of course, technically Princess Anne must contend with the idea that Queen Camilla outranks her as a member of the royal family according to protocol. But has Anne ever really appeared to care about such things? This is a woman who married a commoner, divorced him, and remarried within months, not caring a jot about public sentiment or royal propriety. Take a look at this image. Anne is clearly delighted for Camilla, whose horse, Desert Hero, which was bred by the late Queen, won the King George V Stakes on Ladies' Day at Royal Ascot in 2023. I'm reminded of the Yiddish word nakas, meaning joy at the success of someone else, especially a family member. And I think this image is the very definition of that word. Anne is clearly, authentically moved by her sister-in-law's joy. There's simply no way to fake this. Princess Anne is a champion horse rider who, when in 1974 an armed would-be kidnapper demanded she get out of her car, responded coolly and calmly, "Not bloody likely." She has been defying norms and expectations all her life, just like her sister-in-law Queen Camilla. Despite their differences, and the fevered hopes of a great many commentators, the truth is they are both rocks to King Charles, albeit in very different ways. They are not at war. If the Queen and Princess Anne are not the best of friends, it's nonetheless extremely unlikely they are rivals, never mind bitter enemies. Which brings us perfectly to our final image, showing Queen Camilla in November 2024, kneeling before Princess Anne, who in her role as Chancellor of the University of London, had the honour to present the Queen with an honorary doctorate in recognition of her promotion of literacy and literature over many years. Even with protocol turned on its head, with the Queen kneeling before her sister-in-law, they both seem not only relaxed, but perfectly comfortable, if not thoroughly enjoying the moment. Here we have two women who in their own way and in their own style have defied convention. Each at different times have broken the rules, and each are now working tirelessly for the public good, well into their 70s. They also now love the same man, in different ways, just as many years ago they loved the same man in the same way. And I have to be honest, looking at these pictures, I don't see two women at war. Are we really supposed to believe that Queen Camilla and Princess Anne are somehow still torn up over a shared ex-boyfriend from 55 years ago? Honestly, not bloody likely. Well, I hope you enjoyed our look back at the fascinating shared story of Princess Anne and Queen Camilla. Do comment, like and subscribe to the Daily Mail Royals channel to be updated on all our exclusive content. Thanks for watching. I'm Richard Eden. Cheerio.